sir. Please have a seat. The first thing I will ask you to do is to state your first and last names for the record and spell each.
Bryce Scholton, spelled B-R-Y-C-E. Scholton is S-C-H-O-L-T-E-N.
Thank you. Go ahead, your witness.
Thank you. What line of work are you in?
I'm a police officer for the city of Waukesha.
How long have you been a Waukesha police officer?
7.5 years.
What's your current assignment?
Currently, I'm a specialist assigned to the Criminal Investigations Division.
What about back in November of 2021? What was your assignment back then?
I was a police officer.
Were you working as a police officer on November 21st of 2021?
Yes, I was.
Were you assigned to work at the Waukesha Christmas Parade?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall where you were posted during the parade?
My assignment was traffic control at the intersection of Northwest Avenue and Wisconsin Avenue.
Will you please put up for the jury exhibit number 1, which has previously been published?
Go ahead.
Could you circle for us the intersection where you were posted on
Yes.
this map? Actually, it's a touch. Use your finger.
Just use your finger.
I may want to take that away.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've circled the intersection of West Main Street and Wisconsin Avenue, correct?
Correct.
What does the purple line on that map depict?
The purple line is the parade route for the Christmas parade.
But then, what happens to the purple line at Maine and Wisconsin?
That is where the line stops. That is, I believe, where the vehicle left the parade route.
The vehicles and the groups and the participants of the parade who were marching on the parade route, where did they go once they got to the intersection of Maine and Wisconsin?
They continued down the parade route, which was eastbound on Wisconsin Avenue, and then after reaching Maple Avenue, then they were to go southbound.
And the library is near that intersection, is that right?
Correct.
Traffic coming eastbound on Wisconsin Avenue from the west, were they able to get through the intersection where you were posted?
No, I had traffic blocked off where I circled there. You can barely see anymore, but the red line, that is how I had barricades across that intersection. So all eastbound traffic on Wisconsin was forced to go southbound on Northwest Avenue.
Okay, what about traffic approaching from the south on, West Avenue?
Yes, so northbound traffic on Northwest Avenue could only go westbound on Wisconsin Avenue.
Do you recall what you were wearing that day?
Objection, President.
Overruled.
Yes, I was wearing my standard police uniform with external carrier and a police jacket, and on my outermost layer was a neon traffic vest.
We could take this exhibit down, please.
What was that number again?
1.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
Were you the only police officer stationed at that intersection?
Yes, I was.
Do you know approximately how far away the next closest officer would have been?
I believe the next closest officer was approximately 2 blocks away.
Did you have a police radio with you while you were standing in the intersection?
Yes, I did.
At some point, did you hear something on the radio that concerned you?
Yes.
Describe that for us.
I heard, so the parade was on Channel 3, so that's what I was assigned to. These radios also have the ability to scan other channels, so I was scanning Channel 1, which is what the road squads were working on. At that time, I heard a call for service on Channel 1 for the road squads to be dispatched to, and it was some sort of domestic disturbance or fight in Frame Park, which was east of my location. I heard squads responding to that from the south portion of the city. And Northwest Avenue or West Avenue is one of the main thoroughfares in our city to get from the southern portion to the northern portion, or at least to the downtown area. And I could hear squads coming from that area, so I blocked traffic to allow the squads to get through. And then I just continued on with my parade duties.
What happened next?
After that, approximately a minute or so later, I believe I started hearing radio traffic on both Channel 3 and Channel 1. I believe either a reserve officer or a community service officer on Channel 3 requested an ambulance somewhere on the eastern portion of the parade route. I remember it was sort of towards the beginning of the parade. They were asking for an ambulance because someone had been hit.
Then what happened?
I believed that it was something stemming from the domestic or the fight, because during that fight someone had fled on scene and someone had been flagged down who had reported this incident. So I believed that the hit was something to do with the physical altercation that had happened. Moments later, this was all sort of spun out of control very quickly. Radio traffic became more and more difficult as Channel 1 and Channel 3, so as officers on the road and officers and community service officers and reserve officers were working the parade, everyone was starting to get on the radio, and more people started calling for ambulances. And then I could tell as people were calling for them, it was moving westbound on the parade route.
What did you do as a result of hearing that information on the radio?
It was tough to piece all together. I didn't know exactly what was going on. I knew something was happening, but I didn't know exactly what. I have a collar mic, so my microphone was approximately right about here on my chest. I don't have an earpiece. That's just what I use. So between trying to listen to the radio microphone and the parade, it was sort of hard to piece together. But after a few minutes, I realized something was happening. I began walking away from my post, and I walked past my barricade sort of into the parade route. And as I did that, I was looking more to like northeast. I couldn't see that much of the parade because where West Main Street ends right there, it's got a hard turn to go southbound to Wisconsin. So I could only see approximately, I don't even know, maybe 100 yards or less of the parade route. And at that point, that is when I started hearing more screams. And this time it wasn't just screams on my radio, it was screams like in my vicinity that I could hear. And at that moment, I saw a red blur come past the Wisconsin House westbound and make a very hard braking maneuver to navigate the left-hand turn on West Main Street to go
there, and let's put
southbound.
Let's put Exhibit 1 back up, please.
As you're putting Exhibit 1 back up, I just want to make a record of the hand gesture he made previously when testifying about, I believe it was his radio microphone. He used his right hand, I would say about heart height, to indicate his, I believe he called it a lapel mic or something to do with his radio and where he would hear from. Go ahead.
Objection. I don't think he said lapel. I think he referred to the microphone just being here and not using the earpiece. That's just.
Your objection is noted. The state can seek clarification, but the fact I did my best to describe the action of the officer on the stand. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can we actually zoom in on the bottom left corner of this map? You mentioned the Wisconsin House. Can you describe for us where that is?
The Wisconsin House is actually this building right here that is tan. It's the farthest building right before, I guess on the left portion.
You just put a little dot there.
That should be the Wisconsin House.
Okay, so right as the Main Street curves to the left there?
Correct. It is I believe it's the last building sort of on West Main Street right before the left turn.
So if you were standing in the intersection of Wisconsin and Main, the Wisconsin House is the building that would obstruct your view further east up Main Street?
Correct. There's a parking lot to the left as you look at the screen, and the vehicle's parked there, so I can't even see pretty much anything in front of the Wisconsin House on Main Street from my location.
We can take that back down, please. What happened as the red blur rounded the corner? I
realized what was happening at that point. I recognized it was a red SUV, and there was extreme vehicle damage to it on the front. The hood was smashed up towards the windshield, the front portion, the front bumpers, the fenders, everything was, it was extreme vehicle damage, like vehicle damage that you would see at a traffic crash between two vehicles. At that point, between all the screaming, I heard everyone calling for ambulances and help, and then realizing people hit, I knew it was now people hit by a vehicle, and I knew that those initial requests were so far eastbound on the parade, and now I'm at towards the end of the parade, or at least the end of the portion of Main Street. I knew that this vehicle had likely, and based on the speed of the vehicle, that the vehicle had ran through the entire parade route and likely severely injured people or killed people. And at that point, I thought it was a terror attack at the parade.
What happened as the SUV continued southbound?
As the vehicle navigated its turn to go southbound, it accelerated towards me. That is when I knew I had to use deadly force to stop the threat. And as the vehicle was approaching me, I remembered making the decision that the easiest shot likely would have been through the windshield. However, I remembered the entire backdrop were just surrounded with kids and people. So I waited for the vehicle to pass me and tried to direct my rounds as most southern as I could because there were less people in that direction.
Where were you standing in the intersection as the vehicle passed you?
At this point, I had walked northbound slightly, so I was, I believe, just out of the intersection at West in Wisconsin. So I was on, I believe my shots, I was technically on Main Street at the time when I began shooting.
Using cardinal directions, can you describe for us which side of you the SUV passed?
Objection, what is cardinal? What does that
Overruled. The witness may answer.
The vehicle passed to the east of me.
What direction were you facing as it first started to pass you?
I was facing north.
So that would have been on your, the vehicle would have passed you on your right.
Correct.
Okay. How close did you come to the vehicle as it passed you?
It was very close. I believe at the time, I remember stepping to my left. It was so close I felt like I could touch the side of the vehicle.
Could you see into the vehicle?
Yes, I could.
How many people could you see inside of the vehicle?
I saw one person.
Where was that person in the vehicle?
That person was the driver's seat of the vehicle.
Did you get a good look at the driver?
Yes, I did.
Do you see the driver in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, I'd ask Mr. Brooks please remove his mask for a moment.
Thank you for doing that, Mr. Brooks. His mask is off.
Can you identify the driver in the courtroom if you see him?
Yes, the driver is seated at the defense wearing a blue tie and blue shirt underneath his suit jacket.
Does the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant?
The record will reflect the witness has identified the defendant as the driver of the vehicle he saw on November 21.
What happened after the vehicle passed you on your right?
After the vehicle passed me on my right, I began firing at the driver of the vehicle, and as that happened, he ran over the barricades and ultimately left the parade route and continued southbound on Northwest Avenue.
West Avenue is how many blocks from Maple Avenue?
One block.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled.
And to what direction is west from Maple?
West Avenue is one block to the west from Maple.
I'd like to show for the witness only, please, exhibit number 57. Can we clear the annotations? You see a video on the screen in front of you?
Yes, I do.
We're going to play a few moments without any audio just to see if you recognize this video, okay?
Okay.
We've played 7 seconds for you. Do you recognize this video?
Yes, I do.
What does it show?
This is the vehicle that was driven by Darrell Brooks on during the Christmas parade that drove past me and I shot at.
Objection. I don't consent to her being called that name, or nor do I identify it. I'm hearing third party. So
Your
I want that
objection
stated
is
for the
noted.
record.
It's overruled. The witness has previously identified you.
I want
Go
that
ahead.
stated for the record.
You may ask your next question.
Does this video accurately depict the scene as you saw it that day?
Yes, it does.
Move Exhibit 57 into evidence and request permission to publish.
Exhibit 57 is received by the court and permission to publish is granted.
This is a 19-second video. I'll wait for the bailiff to signal that the jury has it. Okay. Before we hit play, I'd like you, if you can, to point out the Wisconsin house for us.
The Wisconsin house is this brown brick building here on the right that has the Golden Moments Gentleman Beer sign right here.
Thank you. We can clear that. And we'll watch the entirety of this clip with volume, please, at regular speed. Okay. How many gunshots did you hear in that video?
3.
Is that consistent with your memory of the event?
Yes, it is.
Can we pull that back up at about the 10-second mark, please? Do you see yourself at the 10-second mark?
Yes, I do.
Can you circle yourself for us? You're the only person at this 10-second mark wearing a yellow vest.
Correct.
Okay, we can clear that, please. Can we slow this down with no audio? Slow it down to about 50%, please. And play from there. And we can pause it. We've stopped at 16 seconds. Does that portion of the video accurately reflect what you did that day?
That is correct.
Okay. I'd like to show for the witness only, please, exhibit number 170.
Go ahead.
Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, I do.
What does it show?
This shows the vehicle damage that I observed when I first saw the vehicle as it was coming towards me. This is the vehicle that was, again, driven the Christmas parade by Darrell Brooks.
Objection. I don't consent to being called that name. Again, for the record, I'm hearing third party.
The
For the
objection,
record.
it's on the record.
Does this appear to be a screenshot from the video we just watched, exhibit 57?
It does appear so.
And again, this is then an accurate depiction of how the vehicle looked that day?
That is correct.
I'd move exhibit 170 into evidence and ask to publish.
Objection. Relevancy.
Overruled. Exhibit 170 is received. Permission to publish is granted. I would remind the jury once again that comments made by parties and lawyers are not evidence and should thus not be considered as such.
Now I'd like to show for the witness only exhibit number 169, please.
Go ahead.
Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is that same vehicle. It appears to be just moments after that first picture we just were shown.
Does this appear to be a screenshot from the video in Exhibit 57?
Yes, it does.
Is this an accurate depiction of how the vehicle and the driver looked to you that day?
Yes.
Move Exhibit 169 into evidence and ask to publish.
Exhibit
Objection.
169 is received, permission to publish is granted.
Objection.
Noted, overruled.
Now I'd like to show for the witness only, please.
Hold on. Was that in the jury box? Okay, it was there. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that earlier. All right, so next exhibit you may show to the witness.
Exhibit 58, please. We're going to play a few seconds of this, give you a chance to see if you recognize it, okay?
Okay.
Okay. We've played 7 seconds. Do you recognize this video?
Yes, I do.
What does it show?
It shows pretty much what the last video showed, just from a different point of view from that same intersection.
Is this an accurate video depicting the events as you saw them on November 21st?
Yes, it does.
I'll move Exhibit 58 into evidence and ask to publish with the caveat about the comments on the right side of the screen, please.
Objection.
Exhibit 58 is received, permission to publish is granted. The jury will disregard the comments that are on the right side of the exhibit. Those are not to be considered as evidence.
This is a 15-second clip. We'll play it once at regular speed with audio, please. We see the barricades at the end of that clip, is that right?
That is correct.
And do you recall what those are made out of?
I believe they're made out of fiberglass or plastic.
And what we saw in that video, again, that's inaccurate. Does that match up with how you recall the incident?
That is correct.
That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, any questions for this witness, sir?
I do. You stated initially that you had heard some radio calls about a possible altercation at Frame Park.
That is correct.
Do you recall what the initial report of that was?
My recollection of that was that there was a call for service. It was either a domestic or some sort of physical altercation along the riverfront in Frame Park, and that there was a male with armed with a knife, and that he was fleeing from the area.
So it was reported it was a possible knife involved and there was a male running from the scene?
That is correct.
And were you ever given any further information about the male with the knife that was running from the scene?
No.
Any information that the male with a knife running from the scene was in a vehicle at any time?
No.
Do you know if any investigation was done looking into that supposed fight at the park?
Yes.
And what did you learn?
I did not learn anything of it. I just know that squads were responding there to investigate it. I was not updated on their findings or what they had investigated. I just know that they were dispatched there for that investigation.
Do you recall if there was ever a knife recovered or a suspect recovered in that supposed incident?
Do you mean like how much later do I know? Like what I know now?
At any time. Do you know if there was a suspect, I guess I would say, apprehended or anything that was found with a knife, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I do not know if the suspect from that incident, which was you, was located
When you
with
say
a knife.
you, what do you mean?
You,
Who
Darrell
you
Brooks. I know you were the suspect in that incident, and I know you were taken into custody approximately 30 to 40 minutes later. I do not know if you were armed when you were taken into custody.
I'll let the record reflect that I do not identify by that name, nor do I know any individual by that name. I'm here in third party.
The record's noted, although the jury will disregard the comments, they are
keep
not
saying-
evidence in this case. Next question, please.
At the time, you said, did you respond to that incident at the park?
No.
So how can you know who was involved with it if you didn't respond yourself?
Because you stated at any time this investigation took a long time to complete, and from this investigation we determined that you were the suspect in that investigation.
You determined that?
I did not, no.
Okay. So basically, you're just going off what you were told, because you just stated that you didn't make any determination, nor did you investigate it. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct.
You also gave, and when you were asked the question of were there any other officers along the route, or I don't know if that was referring to side exits or anything of that nature, but I recall you stating that you gave an estimate, stating that you weren't sure where other officers were stationed, but you gave an approximate estimate. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
And would that have been officers stationed at different cross streets?
That is correct.
Do you know if those cross streets were barricaded?
I know that there were barricades across numerous intersections for the parade route. That's how we shut down traffic in the downtown area for parades.
So pretty much every side street is barricaded.
I can't give you specifics on what streets were barricaded, but yes, the vast majority of streets are barricaded to stop traffic for the parade route.
Can you pull up Exhibit 1 and publish?
The state would please do that. Thank you.
Does the jury have it yet?
Yes.
Can you see, well, I know you can. Can you see the red lines on this map that we're looking at?
Yes,
And what do those red lines constitute?
barricades.
So would it be fair to say that there's a red line at every cross street that we can see on this map? That would be
Do you mean
Start-
along the parade route or
start
the entire map?
along the parade route, starting at East Main Street. There's a red mark. Oh, I didn't mean to put that arrow. Can we clear that? I was trying to put like a little dot. Starting there, there's a red line there. There's 2 at Buckley.
Hold on, and just so the record is clear, he put a mark at near the intersection of East Main and White Rock Avenue. So from that location to where?
There's 2 at Buckley.
Well, hold on, you're testifying now. You gotta ask a question. So the jury will disregard that
Are
statement.
there 2 at Buckley?
Yes.
Is there one at Martin Street?
Yes.
Is there one at is there two at Barstow Street?
Yes.
One at Gaspar,
Yes.
one at North Grand, and one at West Broadway.
There's 2 at West Broadway.
Well, this one is on the closer to where it says North Grand, and one is on the other side of the star right there. This is what I'm referring to.
Okay. Yes, there are
Can
2
you
right
clear
there.
that?
Please clear that, Madam Clerk.
So there's 2 there. There's 2 at Clinton Street. Can you see those 2?
Yes.
There's one at Maple Avenue. Can you see that one?
Yes.
And there's one at right here at West Avenue. Can you see that?
Correct. Yes.
So it would be fair to say that there's pretty much barriers at every single street from White Rock and East Main to West Main and Northwest Avenue.
Yes.
Barricades at all those streets.
Yes.
Do you know if there were officers stationed at those barricades?
Yes. This map shows, it appears, where everyone was for their assignments that day.
So would it be fair to say if someone wanted to exit the parade route, they would essentially be blocked in by the officers and barricades?
No.
There are barricades at these streets we can see. Would that be fair to say?
No.
So it's not fair to say that there's barricades at these streets?
It's fair to say that there's barricades at the streets.
So essentially, if someone was leaving the parade route, can they just go right through the barricades?
Based on the previous videos that we just were shown.
Not based on the previous videos. If someone was leaving the parade route, can they just go down these streets that are barricaded? Can they just drive right out of there?
Yes, the video
How
showed
when,
that.
how when it's barricaded?
As the video were shown
We're not
earlier,
referring to
the
the
vehicle
video. We're
went
not
right through the
referring to-
Hold on,
barricade.
you asked the question, you have to let him answer that he's giving you the reason. You asked him how. He's explaining it.
There's plenty of ways to get off the parade route. You can stop after being given lawful orders by officers, and they could have directed you off the parade route in a safe manner. You could have stopped the vehicle at any point, or you could have driven through plastic barricades like you did at Northwest Avenue, where I was located. So
And
yes, you
you
can drive
refer to
through
as
plastic
who?
barricades.
The
You.
you refer to as who?
Darrell Brooks, you, the person that's talking.
The you? And how did you come to the conclusion of that name, as you stated that you couldn't see past this building here, which you said is the Wisconsin House? Would that be fair to say?
Well, that's a compound question, so you need to rephrase that, sir.
You stated, clear this right there.
Please? Is that a please?
Can you clear this circle and arrow right here? That's
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You stated that from where you were positioned at, you couldn't see around that building. Did you say that?
Yes, I did.
So it would be fair to say you also couldn't see what was happening along the parade route on Main Street. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
So it would be also fair to say that everything that you knew up until that point came over the radio and you didn't have first-hand knowledge.
That is correct.
You also stated that after a few minutes of hearing these, I guess, radio reports, you said after a few minutes, you noticed something was going on. Do you recall from the reports how long this vehicle traveled along the parade route? An estimate of the time that it traveled down the parade route?
I do not know how long the vehicle was on the parade route for. If I had to estimate, I would estimate approximately 1 to 2.5 minutes. 2 minutes maybe.
Would you say that it's fair to say that that's relatively a short amount of time?
I would agree with that.
So what do you mean by after a few minutes you noticed something was going on?
Because after a few minutes, what I meant by that was the initial call for service at the boat launch, or for that domestic fight in Frame Park. From that time frame, from when squads were responding to there to the time that I had shots fired, that is what I mean by a few minutes. So you have to take into account the time for squads responding to that call.
I don't know police protocol, so just asking.
Mr. Brooks, please ask your next question.
I'm getting to it.
No, right, but I have to advise the jury to disregard the comment because it's not testimony.
And you stated that. Well, let's go to.
Yeah, go ahead. You don't need, do you need that? We're gonna turn it off.
Yeah, you can take that down. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you.
I believe it's Exhibit 57. Can we pull up Exhibit 57? Can we bring it to about 16 or 17 seconds? Can you bring it back a little bit? One more second if you could. Derek, can you pause it, Derek? Would it be fair to say that those are barricades that are laying in the street there?
Correct.
Any idea why they were not standing up?
Yes, I do.
What would be the reason?
It was very windy that day, so when they were standing up how they normally are, they kept on blowing across the street. So we tilted them on their sides so they wouldn't get blown across the road, and they would still stay up there and block traffic.
They would be able to block traffic by laying down,
Yes, they serve the same purpose.
but they would be able to block traffic by laying down.
I guess I don't understand what your question is here.
Would it be much more easier to see them if they were facing upright than laying down?
I think the height difference between them laying down and being upright is probably quite minuscule, because as you see, the legs that are now up in the air are approximately the same height as what the bar would be if they were standing up how they normally are.
And you come to that conclusion how?
Based on my training experience after deploying barricades on numerous events and working several parades in my work history.
So you would estimate that a barricade facing upright and a barricade laying down would be the same height?
Approximately.
Can you bring it back to 10 seconds? From what we're looking at right now, it's a little hard to see. You can see the vehicle, you can see where you identified you were, but it's a little bit hard to see everything. Would that be fair to say? Because of the person with the black coat and the gray hoodie and Nike black pants is directly in the middle of the screen? That'd be fair to say it's a little hard to see from this.
Where it is paused now, yes.
Yes, that's what I meant, where it's paused now.
Yes.
It looks like this would be you right here. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
It looks like you're firing your weapon right there. Would that be fair to say?
I do not know if I have pulled the trigger yet or not. I don't believe I have.
You were readying to fire at that point.
That's correct.
Do you recall what you were aiming for?
Yes, I do.
Can you state for the record and for the jury?
You, Darrell Brooks.
Again, you make reference to the you and the name. How did you come to that? Seeing as how you just testified to that you couldn't see anything before what you call the Wisconsin house. Would that be fair to say that you testified to that?
That's correct.
And you also stated that you learned additional information later on. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct.
So how could you determine at this time right now where we're looking at that you knew the suspect's name and the driver? Because you keep referring to you and then you saying the name. How did you have that information at this point that's paused right here that we're looking at?
I didn't say at that time I knew your name.
You referred to the name. Did you not?
That is correct.
So how were you able to obtain the information about a name?
I did not know your name at the time I shot at you.
Who's the you were referring to?
Darrell Brooks.
Again, you say a name that you haven't answered how you came to that information. Were you told this?
Yes.
By whom?
I do not know who told me. Ultimately, I just know that throughout the course of the investigation, you were arrested within 30 or 40 minutes, and you were identified as Darrell Brooks, who was the suspect in this incident.
So you either had to hear that name from either a report that you heard or someone told you. How did you come to the conclusion of the name?
I'm assuming someone at the police department told me your name.
And you don't recall who that was?
No.
Even though you can cite the name so clearly and identify it and keep stressing it and stressing it, and you don't recall how you learned the information of the name?
That is correct.
So is it fair to say that you're just using the name based off what you're told and not what you were aware of?
What are you asking me?
Is it fair to say that you're identifying this name based off of what you told and not what you knew?
I'm saying the name based on the fact that you are now, you were arrested for this incident. You were identified during this incident, and because of that investigation, that is how we know your name.
Would it be fair to say, and obviously you said you've been in law enforcement for 7.5 years, correct?
Correct.
I'm sure you've done a lot of investigations in that 7.5 years. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
So you do understand that during a police investigation, any suspect is innocent until proven guilty. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct.
And so with that knowledge, why are you so adamant about the name of the suspect that you just testified to not being aware of at the time? that you testified to, in fact, being told?
Sorry, I'm confused by your question. Can you say it again?
I think it was clear, but I'll say it again.
Thank you.
Well, I'll say it this way. You testified to not being aware of the suspect's name at the time.
Correct.
You also testified to being told of the name, correct?
Correct. I don't know how I came about your name. I would assume it was through the investigation at the police department.
And were you, in fact, part of that investigation?
No, I was not.
So it would be fair to say that by you using a name, you would not be short. How can you be short?
I'll object.
Grounds.
Argumentative.
It's been asked, it's been answered, it's argumentative, the objection is sustained. Please ask your next question.
When asked about what you were aiming at when you fired, you didn't give a definitive answer. You were aiming for the driver?
I felt like I gave a pretty definitive answer. My
Right.
answer was you,
You
Darrell
were aiming
Brooks.
for the driver.
Yes. It's pretty definitive. I identified the person I
So
was shooting at.
what part of the driver's body could you see when the vehicle passed you?
When the vehicle was approaching me, I could see the silhouette of his face and upper portion of his body.
Can you describe what you mean by silhouette?
The upper portion of a person's body, I would say, from maybe chest, shoulders, and head and face.
You said silhouette though. What is a silhouette?
The outer portions of what would be like your shoulder down, your arms to your chest. The silhouette would be the outer portion of it.
That would be the upper half, not the silhouette. What do you mean by silhouette?
The objection is sustained. It's Mr. Brooks is not asking a question. It was argumentative. The jury can
Would
certainly
it be
decide what that means, but
Would
he's
it-
answered the question.
Would it be fair to say that that would be equivalent to a profile?
What do you mean by a profile?
A profile would be sort of like a side angle view. Would it be fair to say that a silhouette would be more of an outline that would be kind of similar to a profile?
I don't know exactly what you're asking here, but I can tell you when the vehicle was driving towards me, I could see your face, and then as the vehicle drove to my right, yes, then I saw the side of your face, and so then, yes, as a vehicle passes you, you see different portions of the driver, I guess you could say.
And so you aim towards what you can see.
Correct.
So that would be the upper part, as you say, you said the shoulder. You made I think it was your left hand pointing to your right shoulder, shoulder and up silhouette, as you say.
That is what I could see when you were driving at me. You asked me what I could see of you, and that is what I could see of you in the vehicle when you were approaching me.
The question now, though, is that what you aim for?
I was aiming at you, yes.
At what you can see.
I was aiming at you in the driver's seat, yes.
Shoulder, as you pointed to, and up, correct? Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Firing a weapon of your caliber, would any of those shots be kill shots?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that firing a kill shot at anyone would terrify him?
I'm sure being shot at is terrifying. Yes, it is.
So it'd be fair to say you were shooting to kill.
No.
So would it be fair to say that, judging based on what you see that you testified to, a silhouette from about here that you pointed to, from the shoulder, using your left hand, you pointed at your right shoulder from here up, and you just acknowledged that any one of those 3 shots could have been kill shots. Would it be fair to say that you were aiming to kill? Shooting to kill, rather. Not aiming to kill, but shooting to kill.
No.
So, in your estimate, what do you think you would have hit if you just testified to saying that you aimed at the driver? What were you estimating to hit?
Well, my intention was to shoot you in the upper portion of the body. However, my intention was not to kill you. My intention was to stop the threat that you were posing to everyone in the downtown area at the Christmas parade.
Keep referring to the you again. Well, that's not a question, so. By your estimation, acknowledging that those were kill shots, if you connected with any of those shots, is it possible the driver could have been killed?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that that's deadly force?
Yes.
Do you think it would have been possible to aim at the tire of the vehicle?
No.
Why not? Would shooting the tire of the vehicle not stop the vehicle?
No, it would not have.
So a blown tire would, to your estimation, a blown tire would not stop a vehicle from moving?
No, it will not.
So it'll just keep on, it won't even slow down?
That is correct. I'm trained to stop the threat. You were the threat. The vehicle was not. The vehicle was the weapon in which you used. So that is why I shot at you.
There's the you again. Pretty clever. Could you have, well, you testify that you're trying to stop the threat. And so, would it be fair to say that that training constitutes shooting kill shots?
Well, we are trained in deadly force, and when we are presented with a deadly force incident, yes, we have to sometimes make that difficult decision and use deadly force.
Have you ever used deadly force before that incident?
Objection.
Grounds.
Sustained.
You said you're trained to use deadly force. So would it be fair to say that anytime you shoot your weapon, it would be deadly force?
When it is directed at a person, yes.
Were you injured in any way during the incident?
No, I was not.
And at the time, being where you were positioned at, you've already testified that you could not see what was going on during the parade route from your position. So, why did you feel the need at the time, not knowing the full extent of what was happening, to use deadly force?
Because as I previously stated, based on the fact that the radio traffic for people screaming for ambulances, and as different officers were getting on the radio, and it was progressively moving further and further westbound towards me on the parade route, that, and then officers saying someone was hit, which I initially thought was a physical altercation, someone being hit, but it was a vehicle versus person hit. Based on that, the vehicle speed at which, yes, I could not see it down Main Street. I only had a couple seconds at most until the vehicle from where I saw it was to my location. So based on the amount of vehicle damage, I knew the vehicle had been striking pedestrians in the roadway, and because of that, that's a deadly force incident. So that is why I deployed deadly force.
So you said you knew what the vehicle had. You knew. You said it multiple times. You knew.
Yes.
How could you know if you could not see around the position that you were positioned in? How do you know that?
Because based on the speed of a vehicle on a closed roadway during a parade, and people running out of the way so they did not get run over right in front of me, between all of those things, I knew what had just happened, and that is why I had to take action.
And you knew based on the radio reports?
I would say everything that I had just previously described, all of that encompassing, yes, that led up to my decision making into yes, now I knew what had happened. I did not know previous to that what was going on. I did not know there was a vehicle on the roadway until I saw it. And it all made sense when I put everything together.
When you saw it, by the time you saw it, as you said, it was a couple of seconds. So at that point, did you observe the vehicle strike anyone from the time that you saw it?
No, I did not. I was focused on the vehicle, so I just remember that there were a ton of little kids and adults on the sidewalks. I knew there were a lot of children right in the roadway right there. And I remember seeing people like running, but I wasn't really paying attention to the people. I was just focused on the vehicle. So that was really all I was focused on at that point.
You weren't paying attention to any other people?
That was not my primary focus.
But you do recall that no one was struck from the time you saw the vehicle?
Yes, after looking back, after videos later on throughout the investigation.
No. From which you saw, from which you observed with your own eyes.
No, I can't recall ever seeing someone hit right in front of me. No, I do not recall that.
Does the exhibit videos that you saw here today, does anyone get struck in those videos that you saw today?
No, not that I saw today.
And you still made the decision to shoot to kill?
That's correct. Actually, correction, I shot to stop the threat. If ultimately you would have been killed from that, that is a possible outcome.
But you did testify that they were kill shots, did you not?
Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained. It's also been asked and answered in multiple ways at
Do
this
you
point.
recall what your shots hit, if anything?
Yes, later on throughout the investigation when I gave
At the time. Not later on, at the time where you fired the shots.
Mr. Brooks, you asked a question. He was attempting to answer it, so you have to
I
let.
was trying to give him clarification on what I mean.
But you have to let him answer the question that you asked, and if you feel the need for follow-up, then you can do that, or ask a very specific question. But I'm allowing him to answer. He was interrupted. Go ahead.
I believe it was 3 days after the incident. That is when I gave my voluntary statement to Detective Kirby and Detective Casey, and upon completion of that statement, I asked them if they could share any information with me, and during that conversation I was shown a picture of the vehicle and where my round struck the vehicle.
You stated you asked them for any additional information that they can give you.
Correct.
So it would be fair to say at that time you still didn't have a lot of information. Would it be fair to say that?
That is correct. I didn't know where my rounds had struck previous to that.
Did you ask them in the statement that you just testified to, saying you asked them if they could provide you with any more information? Did you at any time specifically ask about the shots that you fired when you requested if they could give you any more information?
I do not remember the specifics of what questions I asked in pertaining to what information they could share with me. I think it was sort of a generalization of what can you share with me at this point.
So would it be fair to say at that point that there's a possibility that you did not know the name of the suspect, nor did you know if you had shot the suspect at that time?
At that time, I knew I had not shot the suspect because the night of the incident, when he was taken into custody, it was relayed to me that he was uninjured and he had not been struck by any of my rounds that were fired.
You do recall just testifying to requesting more information from the detectives when you had the conversation with them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you said that you don't recall asking them about if your bullet struck someone. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the day I met with Detective Kirby and Detective Casey, that was, I believe, 2 or 3 days after the incident, Mr. Brooks was taken into custody the night of. So when I was still at the police department, I knew that he had not been struck. So I think we're dealing with the questions I asked of the detectives. That was not the same night of the incident.
I'm sure you asked, you didn't say it, but you said you don't recall the information that you requested. Would that be fair to say?
No, I don't recall specifically what questions I asked I don't know specifically what questions I asked of them a year ago. I know it was a generalized, what information can you share with me at this point? Because I didn't know what was going on in the investigation or what leads they had or essentially what had happened after my involvement, I guess.
So it would be fair to say there was a lot of information that you still was unsure about at that point. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct.
So if there was information that you're acknowledging that you had no knowledge of, which would be essentially the reason why you would ask if they can volunteer more information to you, then how would there be any way of knowing if you struck the suspect?
Objection.
Grounds.
Sustained. It's a compound, confusing question. Please rephrase. And I also think it mischaracterizes the testimony.
And you said you made a statement during your testimony that you had learned that the suspect was not injured. Do you recall who you learned that information from?
I believe when I was back at the police department after the incident, so after using deadly force, you're ultimately removed from the scene. When I was at the police department, I was with a support officer and another detective. And at that point, I was still answering questions for investigating officers for what I saw, what I knew, what I saw in the vehicle. And I believe Detective Stern was at our substation with Darrell Brooks after taking him into custody. And I was shown a photo at that point, and I know I had asked if he sustained any injuries or if anyone else had sustained any injuries from my use of force. And at that point, I was not told that anyone had been struck by my gunfire.
So you just said you asked if the suspect or if anyone else was struck by the gunfire.
That's correct.
So you weren't sure at that point? You weren't
No.
sure?
I was not certain at that point. It was, I can't describe it any more than it was just pure chaos. And at that point, I did not know if anyone else was injured for my rounds, or up until I was confirmed that you were not injured. At that point, no, I did not know if anyone was hurt until I was told that.
So would it be fair to say that, and as you just stated, you were unsure if the suspect or anyone else was injured? Would it be fair to say that there was a possibility because you did not know for certain?
Objection.
Grounds.
Sustain.
Grounds for the sustain, Your Honor.
Asked and answered. Next question.
After the vehicle passed you, did you observe it strike anyone?
I did not observe it strike anyone after it passed me.
Do you recall who you, well, I think you did. I think you said you gave your report to Officer Kirby. Is that correct?
Detective Kirby, yes.
I'm sorry, Detective. Do you recall telling Detective Kirby that you were unaware of a vehicle on the parade route and you were unaware of people being injured?
Yes, I previously stated that.
Were you able to make out a license plates from the vehicle when it passed you?
I later learned that I must have, but I do not recall that.
So from what you recall at the time that the vehicle was passing, you don't recall getting the license plate?
At this time, I do not recall the license plate, but after I shot at the vehicle, I then responded up Main Street and started triaging victims. And after doing that, I met with officers, and because I couldn't get on the radio and give out as much information as I wanted to. So when I spoke with other officers, that's when I explained to them that I was the one that had shot. It was not a suspect shooting, it was me. And that the vehicle in question was a red Ford Escape. And I believe I was talking to Detective Casey, Specialist Moss, and I believe there might have been another officer there as well. And I must have provided a license plate to Detective Casey during that debrief on scene. I did not know about that until about 2 days later when I gave my statement to Detective Kirby and Detective Casey, because that is when I was informed by Detective Casey that I had actually provided him a correct license plate, but I don't remember that.
Any reason why you didn't mention the license plate in your report?
Because like I stated, I don't remember it.
So it'd be fair to say if you don't remember it, then it's a possibility that you didn't get the license plate number.
I would say that if Detective Casey is telling me that I told him on scene during a traumatic incident that I provided him the license plate of the vehicle, I'd have to believe that Detective Casey is correct. There's many things that you do not remember during a traumatic incident, and I believe that's because your brain prevents you from remembering everything.
So you would describe it as a traumatic incident, but you do recall using deadly force and recalling what you was aiming for, but not the license plates or anything else like that.
That is correct.
Would it be fair to say that because you describe it as a traumatic event, that there was a lot of things that you probably don't recall about the incident?
I would agree with that. I would think that there's a lot of things when I started going up West Main Street and started seeing the absolute destruction. I know there's things that I did and saw that I don't really remember, and I don't really want to remember.
Will one of those possibly be the suspect that you keep naming?
No.
And how did you come to the knowledge of the make and model of the vehicle when on the exhibit that was shown, you only had interaction with it for a few seconds? How were you able to make out the make and the model of the vehicle?
Because that vehicle model has been out for quite some time, and I'm halfway decent with vehicles, and I readily recognize that it was a Ford Escape.
So you've seen many Ford Escapes?
Yes.
And you said the model has been out for some time, so what do you mean by that? Do you mean
It's
was an older
2022
model?
now, and that Ford model was approximately a 2008-ish to maybe a 2011, 2010-ish. So, yeah, they've been out for over a decade.
And how did you come to that knowledge of the estimate of the years that the model could have been? Would you agree that that's pretty difficult to know just off the bat?
No.
Would that be fair to say?
No.
So it would be pretty easy to tell the make and model in year of a vehicle just by looking at it.
That is correct.
So it'd be fair to say if someone had a vehicle right here in front of you, you'd be able to tell just by looking at it for a couple of seconds the make, the model, and the year.
Depending on what vehicle it is, yeah, quite likely. I'm decent with vehicles.
What do you mean by decent?
I can recognize many vehicles that are manufactured. Part of being a police officer is dealing with vehicles. We run a lot of vehicle registration plates. So when you match the registration to a vehicle on a response, you become very well accustomed to the many different vehicles that are manufactured.
Did you at any time see the registration of the vehicle that passed you?
Like I stated previous, I debriefed with Detective Casey during the incident, and he stated that I gave him a registration number, a registration plate for it. I do not recall giving him that registration plate, but Detective Casey informed me that I provided him a correct license plate for that vehicle.
Would it be fair to say that a registration could, would it be fair to say that that automatically links to the make and model and year of the car? Would it be fair to say that? That if you ran, or if we're judging by the license plates, if you were conducting a stop, and to do that you will have to run the license plates, would it be fair to say that all that information would come up in your computer when you run the license plate? That'd be fair to say?
You had a lot of questions right there. So
Okay, let me back up then. So if you were conducting a traffic stop,
okay,
and you pulled up the license plates of the vehicle that you were stopping,
Okay.
Would the information registered to that vehicle show in your computer?
If the license plate is actually accurate and current to that actual vehicle, yes.
Just so we're clear, the information would come up though.
That is correct. It should, as long as the system is working.
And did you have a system or any equipment that could have assisted you in learning the make and the model and year of the vehicle at the time of the incident?
No, I was on foot with no other equipment.
So is it fair to say that you did not know that information until later when you were told by Detective Casey or another detective?
No, because like I previously stated, I can recognize vehicles pretty well, and I knew it was a Ford Escape, and I knew the approximate year of it.
You did testify that, and you can also see from the exhibit video, that the front end of the vehicle was damaged. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
And you can still make out the make and model and year of the vehicle with extensive damage.
That is correct.
Could you see the emblem of the vehicle at that point?
I don't recall if I saw an emblem or not. I know the body style of the vehicle, and I knew it was a Ford Escape.
Would it be fair to say that many SUVs have the same type of body build?
I'm sure some vehicles do look similar.
So that would it be fair to say that there's a possibility that you could not make out the make and model and year of the vehicle, especially with it being extensively damaged to the front?
No, I was confident that it was a Ford Escape.
Did you notice any tints on that vehicle?
The front windshield that I looked through, I know was not tinted, or it was not tinted enough to not make me recognize you.
Did you see any tints on the side of the vehicle?
Not that I recall. And if they were, they weren't that dark.
You don't recall though, for sure, if there were any tints to any windows of the vehicle you saw?
Well, all windows are tinted to some extent. It just depends on to what percentage of tint that they come with. So I'm sure there is tint on the windows, because vehicles come from the factory with some level of window tint. So I guess to your question, was there any window tint? I'm sure there was, but not to a degree that would prevent me from seeing who was driving it.
Explain what you mean by tint percentage.
So there's different varying degrees of tint that you can put on vehicles.
Can you elaborate for the jury?
I'll object.
Grounds.
I'll overrule the objection. Mr. Brooks, please ask your question again.
You stated that all cars come from the manufacturer with some level of tint, but you made a reference to percentage.
Correct.
Can you elaborate on percentage? What would constitute a darker tint versus a lighter tint?
Well, you've asked two questions now, so which one do you want him to answer first?
The last one, I'm sorry.
So you're asking about lighter
About the tint
versus
percentage.
darker.
About the tint percentage.
So like a 50% tint would be a lighter tint than like a 35% tint.
So the lower the percentage, the darker the tint.
That is correct.
Okay. You stated that you're pretty decent with making out make and model and years of vehicles based on your line of work. Would that be fair to say?
That is correct.
Would you know of the make and model of the vehicle that you saw that day would you know if those model vehicles come from the manufacturer with any tint?
To be honest with you, I don't work for Ford, so I don't know if they come with tint, but I would assume, as most vehicles, when they come from the factory, they come with some sort of tint. I believe usually the front is approximately 50% tint, and the rears are usually, I think, 25 or 30 or something like that.
So from your knowledge, the backer windows are usually coming from the manufacturer, maybe a little bit darker than the front.
Correct.
No further questions.
Very briefly, thank you. So the barricades that we saw at the intersection where you were posted, those have been blown over by the wind?
Yes, so when I deployed the barricades initially, standing upright, they kept on blowing directly, like right off the street. So I tipped them down on their sides so they wouldn't, I guess, catch as much wind and they wouldn't blow all over the place.
Did those barricades appear to slow down the SUV as it drove through them?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled, he may answer, given all of the cross.
No, it did not slow the vehicle down at all.
You discharged your firearm 3 times toward the vehicle?
That is correct.
Did all 3 rounds strike the vehicle?
Yes, they did.
Can we please put up for the jury exhibit number 3, which has previously been published?
Go ahead.
We're going to start at the 2-minute and 59-second mark if we can, and while we're working on that, can we please clear the screen, Madam Clerk? Thank you.
What exhibit is that?
3. We're at the 2:58-second mark on this exhibit number 3. Do you see a vehicle on the screen?
Yes, I do.
Does that appear to be the same color of vehicle you saw drive through the intersection where you were posted?
Yes.
Let's play from this second, please. Pause. We paused at 3:02. Does that appear to be the same make and model as the SUV you saw driving through your intersection?
Objection.
Overruled.
It's clearly
Yes,
tinted.
it does.
Is there a difference between this vehicle and the vehicle you saw at your intersection?
The difference in the vehicle is that there's no damage on this one.
Okay, let's play again from this point. Pause. Paused at 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Did you see a person wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt in that clip?
Yes, I did.
Was the appearance of that person and their clothing consistent with the person you saw driving the SUV through your intersection?
Objection, speculation, 2 different incidents.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Yes.
Can we please put up for everybody exhibit number 120, which has previously been received and published?
Go ahead.
Okay. You see the photograph on the screen in front of you?
Yes, I do.
Does that appear to be a vehicle consistent with the one you saw driving through your intersection?
Yes.
And the person seated in the driver's seat, does that look like the same person you saw driving that red SUV?
Yes.
Can we put up for everybody, please, exhibit number 9?
Go ahead.
You see the photograph on the screen in front of you?
Yes.
Does that appear to be the same vehicle that you saw driving through the intersection of Wisconsin and Maine?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Yes.
Does that appear to be the same driver of that same vehicle?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Yes.
Will you please put up for everybody exhibit number 169, which has previously been published?
Go ahead.
Objection, relevancy.
Overruled.
See the photograph on the screen in front of you?
Yes.
Does that appear to be the same vehicle that you saw drive through the intersection of Wisconsin and Maine?
Yes.
Does that appear to be the same driver?
Yes.
What's going on with that front passenger window?
Looks like
Objection leading.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
it looks like it's rolled down.
So if someone had, before this incident, painted that window black, covered it in a black paper bag, and taped it up with duct tape, and then rolled the window down, would that have prevented you from seeing through the front passenger window?
Objection, speculation.
No.
Overruled, the witness may answer.
Who was the person depicted in exhibits number 120, number 9, and number 169?
Darrell Brooks.
Thank you.
Objection, I do not consent to being called that name.
Your objection is noted, however, the jury is
You already-
advised to disregard as it's not testimony. It's a comment. All right, thank you, sir. You may step down. And I appreciate the patience of everyone as we concluded with that witness. We will now take our lunch break. It's 12:58. I'll give the jurors, I'll have the parties come back at 2 o'clock and the jurors probably shortly after that. So thank you, everyone. Please rise for the jury.